hear me? Let me know. So yes, somebody is saying no audio. They're not hearing. So I think I know why that is. Um, so I am going to fix the whole audio problem. Um, so here I am. And now I wonder if they can hear me now that I'm on. So let's see. I'm going to ask again. Can you hear me? Earl is there. So I'm hoping Earl can tell us whether he can hear us. Hey, Dr. Jones. Hey, hey. So what have I been up to? You know, I looked and it's been almost 3 months since I went live doing one of these happy hours, even though we were doing them bi-weekly when the pandemic started. So my apologies, it shouldn't have been that long. Certainly I felt like we had a social contract, so to speak. And the contract was we'll check in with each other every couple weeks to make sure that everybody's doing well, you know, for the purpose of mental health and all that good stuff. How is your mental health doing? I know for me, I've consistently had to keep working on. Okay, Kevin says audio is working. So everybody says they can hear me, they can see me. I'm so excited. So yeah, this is me doing virtual happy hour today. This is what we usually do every couple weeks, but I hadn't been doing it for almost 3 months. Can you believe that? So I'm Dr. Cindy Duke, and you know, for those who are just discovering me, I'm a Johns Hopkins and Yale trained obstetrician gynecologist. I'm also a PhD trained virologist. Actually, my PhD is in microbiology and immunology with a focus in virology, specifically working with viruses and how they interact with the human immune system and how they lead to disease states and how we can counter that with vaccines by doing vaccine development. Now, I just said that I'm a Johns Hopkins and Yale trained obstetrician gynecologist. Well, in addition to completing training in obstetrics and gynecology, I did go on to complete training in reproductive endocrinology and infertility. So I'm actually an OBGYN subspecialist. And I'm emphasizing that and really describing it because I've discovered that for a lot of people, that part isn't clear. And so it's important that we spend time explaining what an OBGYN is and what the subspecialties are, because it turns out the field of OBGYN, obstetrics and gynecology, is really, really broad. It encompasses all of women's health, including from birth all the way to the geriatric side. And within that broad specialty, we need subspecialists who can really hone in on different aspects of women's healthcare, because we have very complex lives as women. And so we need subspecialists. So while OBGYN is a very broad field, within that umbrella field, there are many subspecialties, of which I am trained in one of them, which is reproductive endocrinology and infertility. But the other subspecialties include maternal fetal medicine, or perinatology, or what we everyday people call high-risk obstetrics, right? A high-risk OB doctor, that's a maternal fetal medicine specialist. So that's someone who, like me, completed a 4-year residency here in the United States, at least, a 4-year residency in obstetrics and gynecology, and then following that, competitively matched into a training program for an additional 3 years of training so that they can take care of women who are pregnant, who have very exceptional disease states going on in their pregnancy, or whose pregnancy itself, meaning the fetuses, are considered high risk and need assistance from a perinatologist. Many of them also deliver babies. And so those are your high risk obstetricians. So not every person who's pregnant needs to see an obstetrician who's high risk, but should you need to see one, that's who we send you to. It's a maternal fetal medicine, MFM specialist. Other specialties include GYN oncology. So let's say you develop cancer of the uterus, your ovaries, anything related to your reproductive organs and the organs directly around it, like your ureters, you know, those tubes that drain your kidneys. Or let's say you have cancer involving those things and your reproductive organs, or your colon and your reproductive organs. they play a big role in working with other cancer doctors to treat you. And so that's known as GYN oncology. And for that specialty, the OBGYN residents or people who are trained OBGYNs then competitively match into a training program that lasts anywhere from either 3 years to 4 years to be that to get that additional training. So they don't typically see people who are pregnant or trying to get pregnant. They're seeing people who are diagnosed with cancers or malignancies. If they're involved in something involving pregnancy, it's either because there's a cancer going on or this patient needs a very complicated type of surgery that requires the assistance of the GYN oncologist in an emergency. And so that's what a GYN oncologist is. Other specialties within OBGYN include pediatric gynecology. Yes, indeed. There are OBGYNs who specialize specifically in taking care of pediatric patients. There are those who go on to do fellowships in family planning. And so family planning means talking about everything, not just from contraception, but how to get pregnant, how to, have safe pregnancies, to things like access to care. It's a big advocacy type subspecialty as well. I hope I just did it justice in my description there, but family planning is actually a really big deal, and it involves a lot of global health work as well. In family planning, other subspecialties within OBGYN include those who do what we call minimally invasive gynecology or MIGS. And then there are those, so that's another 2 to 3 year fellowship where doctors, OBGYN subspecialize in doing surgical procedures as much as possible through tiny incisions, using cameras, using robots, etc. Now, people don't have to subspecialize to do minimally invasive surgery. I want to be clear, but there's some who choose to subspecialize to really, really get into the nitty-gritty of that area and become the experts in that area, in their field. And then the other subspecialty that we all probably are familiar with but don't realize it's a discrete subspecialty is known as female pelvic medicine and rehabilitative surgery, or what we call urogynecology, URO. And so in urogynecology, those patients actually are, so we have a lot of people asking questions over on LinkedIn, and Jonathan saying hello, Jonathan. I'm not distracted, guys. I'm just looking in 2 places. But I wanted to say hi to Jonathan as well. So, I think it's important to know, for example, that when people are asking, well, you're an OBGYN, you know all this stuff. Well, we all are introduced to general OBGYN. We all have to be proficient in general OBGYN, but then many of us go on to subspecialize in areas that complement each other and span the spectrum of women's health. So I wasn't done with urogynecology. So the urogynecologists are the ones who subspecialize and really take care of women who are having issues like pelvic organ prolapse. Believe it or not, as a woman ages, the muscles that keep all of her pelvic organs in place can start getting weaker or looser. And, you can have literally where things start bulging a bit or kind of pop out of where they should be. And so although general gynecologists can take care of that, there are those who have subspecialized to take care primarily of issues like that. So if you have a uterine prolapse, if someone is having trouble, for example, if they've had a baby and they had a really bad tear that now leads them to not be able to really control their anal sphincter very well, if they're having issues, controlling their number 2, urogynecologists can really come in and help fix that situation, correct a fistula, correct that weakness. They can help tighten things up, to put it simply. And it's way more complicated than I'm describing, but in layman terms, that's the sort of thing that they do. So, everybody's probably wondering, what have you been up to, Dr. Duke, since you haven't been coming on to do virtual happy hours? And of course, again, guys, if you want to join, just send me a request for an invitation here on Instagram. I'm at Dr. Cindy M. Duke here on Instagram. And we'll chat. But in the meantime, I'll just keep updating you on what I've been up to while I sip on my tea. And today I'm sipping on a lemongrass bergamot, and then I've added fresh ginger and turmeric to the base of it to just infuse as we talk. No sugar, no honey, just the flavors of the tea itself. So, you know, in the last 3 months, so much has happened. And in the course of all that happening, I sort of let the virtual lives slide while I took care of life and career and business. So, you know, let's start with that. You know, business wise, you know, today's actually a pretty special day for me. I was just going through my memories on Facebook and realized that 4 years to the day today, 4 years ago in Salt Lake City, Utah, I announced my practice for me, which is the Nevada Fertility Institute. I had just completed my fellowship in reproductive endocrinology and infertility at Yale that June of that year, but had stayed on in Connecticut for an additional 3 months because I didn't leave Connecticut until September. As I tidied things up and I worked doing what I call locums. Well, it's not what I call locums, what we in medicine call locums or moonlighting. And I did locums with some amazingly wonderful people at 2 hospitals there in Connecticut. One was St. Vincent's Hospital, which is a part of the Ascension or Catholic hospital system there in Bridgeport, Connecticut. And I also, I'm going to raise my chair here. I had also done work with Sharon Hospital in Sharon, Connecticut. Both places, great people, great staff. I actually had gotten into talks with Sharon Hospital to perhaps start a clinic there for fertility. Sharon, Connecticut is a very interesting small town in that it's a small town within a centralized small town within a network of small towns, and you know, upstate Connecticut bordering New York State and bordering Massachusetts, so the Berkshires. And what was really nice about that place where I would moonlight, I moonlighted there for 3 years, but once I finished fellowship, I really worked there very regularly in both those places. And what was really unique about Sharon is it was small town, small hospital, great neighborhood, great town in terms of the people and the excitement over having me there. But it was also nice because I could bring my family. And so as I started planning to leave Connecticut, a number of my family members came to visit, including my little cousins. And we spent a lot of time up in Sharon and the Berkshires, berry picking and so forth. But in all that time, I hadn't told a lot of people who knew me from the world of OBGYN that I was actually very much in the process of starting a clinic in Las Vegas. And Renee said they were hearing me twice. I wonder if they're hearing me now. Now Laura says no sound. So, well, guys, I may not be able to continue this successfully unless, actually, we can continue this successfully. Now that we know the audio and the issues that you're hearing me twice, I have a solution. Guys, please hold. You know, I can't sing or else I'll give you mood music while I solve this problem. But be prepared for some of the lighting to go away temporarily here, and I will be back. Just stay right there. So I'm actually using my new lighting kit as well, but I just figured out what's going on here. So we're going to solve this the best way I know how, which is we'll leave that there. The good news is you can see me. You can see me up close and personal as I walk around my house here. You know, one of the things I'm loving about my, oh, I have to get one more thing. Don't you go anywhere. I'll be right back. So, of course, what I have to get is my tea. I left my tea. So we're going to get my tea. And you're walking with me. You're walking with me. You are walking with me. And hopefully we will solve this issue of the sound. Aren't you guys excited to be here with me troubleshooting my problems as I make technology work on my behalf? Yes, you know, bending the arc of faith and society in my favor. Yes, I can be a goofball many times, a lot. So I've walked to a different place here, and we'll keep talking. Now, Dr. Renee, are you able to hear me in both places? And if you are, is it still echoing or is it better? If I'm still echoing, let me know. All right, if I'm still echoing, let me know. All right, so of course, I'm going to play with the lights because I can do that. How's my lighting, guys? Better, worse, the same? Okay, Dr. Renee says, sounding okay, but the LinkedIn is the problem. So, well, I hope it's solved now that I have moved from within earshot of where I was. So I hope it's better. Actually, I came and sat next to my patio here. So let's open that a little bit. Oh, it's actually too warm out there. I don't like to sweat, especially now that I'm a proud 40-something-year-old woman. I hate sweating because, you know, the body temperature is just warmer. Okay, so Dr. Renee says it sounds good here too. Awesome. Okay, so continue our conversation. So yeah, 4 years ago to this date, exactly, I had started, I had announced the opening of Nevada Fertility Institute. And I know I've never really talked publicly about what it takes to open a clinic, what it takes to start a clinic, what it takes to be someone who goes straight from fellowship to starting a clinic, what it takes to do that as a woman, what it takes to do that as an immigrant woman in the United States. Maybe we'll talk about that over time. For me, you know, in so much as I announced the clinic in October of 2016, the progress and the work toward that point took a good year. It took a good year. It didn't just happen overnight. It took a lot of trips. It took talking to a lot of people. You know, the moment I realized in 2014 that I was really interested in taking the leap of starting my own clinic, that was a big day. Now, you guys have heard me talk about Dr. Amy before, and I would tell you 2014 was a momentous year for me because 2014 was when I did my board examinations in obstetrics gynecology, and it was during my second year of fellowship. And in the fall of 2014, I'd also applied to the Pacific Coast Reproductive Society, PCRS, to attend their annual meeting, which is held in she doesn't remember it, which is so funny, and but not realize that we're impacting them. Because for me, that moment listening to Dr. Amy was watershed, simply because I found her personality so dynamic. And I saw the woman giving this talk about doctors using social media and doctors using media in general to advance and advocate for fertility, advocate for awareness about fertility and women's health and egg freezing. And I just wanted to know everything I could know about this woman. And I learned that she had a practice, and I was like, whoa, okay, so there's at least one person who's done it. Because prior to that, I didn't really know of any women who had started their own fertility practices. Certainly in every realm that I could think of, wherever I'd gone, the practices didn't, if they had women, the women weren't the ones who founded them, nor were they the ones necessarily leading the practice. So I'm not saying this as if I know for sure there were none. In my mind's eye as a fellow, and I suspect for a lot of other fellows, it's the same thing. I didn't see anyone. I wasn't aware. As a specialty, we hadn't, subspecialty rather, there wasn't any push to make sure that the female founders were visible. And that's in a field, by the way, that's relatively young. You know, as I've talked before, the very first IVF baby was born in 1978. So infertility as a field, in terms of the world of modern infertility, wasn't really something that took root until after that first baby was born and advanced reproductive technology really came into being. And so Dr. Amy was the first person I saw, and I remember, you know, I came home, I told my mom, wow, I just saw someone and she's amazing. And I sought her out on LinkedIn and Facebook, eventually on Instagram. So why am I telling you this? Well, I'm telling you this in part because I'm getting to a point, which is the power of social media, right? So like I said, flash forward to a year after talking with Dr. Amy, seeing Dr. Amy talk, actually a year and a half later, I announced on social media, I got brave and said, you know, you've got to tell people, because right now I was at ASRM in Salt Lake City in 2016. And everybody was looking at me kind of feeling sorry. Oh, hi, Cindy, how are you doing? Oh, you know, do you have a job? You know, everybody assumed that because I hadn't announced anything and I certainly hadn't said I was joining any practice to work with them, that maybe I didn't have a job. I was that person who had finished fellowship and had nothing to go on with. And so I remember calling up my family and I said, you know, I have the business cards. I've been giving out these business cards since September, you know, and I'll share the business card because it's kind of funny even watching that business card to see how much even the business card has evolved for my practice. You know, on that original business card that I was giving out, the phone number was a direct personal phone number for me because the practice's number was my number. If you call that number, my cell phone rang while we got a space together. The email went directly to me. It's a different email now even, but I looked at it today, I was like, wow, it's like a baby. You know, I look at it and I was like, 4 years later, it's like my baby's. It's hilarious because that was the nexus for me saying, you know what, I'm gonna have to announce here at ASRM because I went to ASRM. I think I had a poster and an oral. I had 2 presentations. So that's why I went to ASRM 2016 in Salt Lake City. But I wasn't expecting everybody to be like, where are you now? What are you doing? Oh my God, are you okay? You know, are you still looking for a job? And so I was like, you know what, just put it on social media that you actually know what the next phase of your life is going to be so that people would stop worrying. It actually was funny because then I posted it And my family went gaga, and my friends and people all over the world who I knew were like, oh my God, that's amazing. Girl power, boss move. I didn't post it thinking that was going to happen, because I just posted it really so that people would stop bugging me about, what are you doing? Oh my God, I could talk to somebody for you. And I started getting all these messages from women and friends and, family whom were close but hadn't talked in any depth for a long time. And they were all messaging me there in 2016 saying, oh my God, it's so amazing that you did this. Some of my fellow fertility doctors were messaging, asking, how'd you do it? And those messages have continued to this day. And I'm proud to say that I think I've motivated quite a few who've now gone on to either start their own practices or very close to starting their own ventures. Because what I realized from a lot of those messages as they were coming through was seeing me post it was the beginning of, for some people, cracking the sphere of fear that had encompassed them. The fear that this can't be done. People like me don't do this. People like me don't succeed at it. I didn't realize that, but in that moment, I just posted it because I wanted the concerned whispers and the looks. Oh my goodness. And that's something I tell my mom all the time, because, when people who are close to us announce really bad news, and my mom would say, why did they take so long to tell us? Why didn't they tell us that something was happening with them? Well, I didn't announce bad news, but it took me so long to announce good news that I can understand why people will take even longer to guard their bad news. Because my decision, though, to announce was really just to shut people up and to stop the, oh, how you doing, And so imagine if you have bad news, not wanting to tell the world because everybody's just gonna, the lens, the way they approach you changes, the way they talk to you changes, the way they interact with you changes. And so for a lot of people, instead of having to hear the sadness, the sighs, the extra care with which people approach you, they may just keep their bad news to themselves. Given that I instead decided to post good news so I could shut down the bad news tones. Anyway, so back to the reason why I said that. 4 years ago, I had announced the start of Nevada Fertility Institute. At the time when I had announced it, I didn't have any staff yet. I was in the process of interviewing staff, and I think actually it was about 5 days after announcing the clinic that I actually found the medical assistant who started with me, Shauna. And Shauna, I talk about every member of staff that we've ever hired because I've played an integral role in hiring each person. Each person who's worked with me has worked with me with a purpose. Every person was hand-selected, and in so doing, they brought very unique things to the table, even if they're not here today. So like Shauna worked with me for a total of 4 months. She was the only one. And so she had a background in customer service. She was actually an actress. She had, let's see, I'm trying to remember her most famous part because she was very proud of this. She is very proud of this. I still talk with her. She was one of the waitresses in the casino scene for, oh my gosh, those movies that those guys did where they ended up in Asia, drunk, didn't remember who they were. But anyway, she was one of the casino. It'll come back to me because I know I watched those films. But, what was really good about her is she had very excellent customer service. She's now a flight attendant. But what was really good about her being my first MA was she was ideal for what we needed, which is she needed to be front desk. She needed to be customer service. She needed to know Las Vegas, and she had lived here for over 20 years by that point. She needed to understand the patient and the clientele, and she had actually worked hangover. Yes, Samantha. Yes, hangover. Oh my God, we should play charades together. You totally got me. You totally got me. Yes, the hangover movies. So Shauna was the waitress in one of the casino scenes. And so we met, and she had that personality. You know, I did my interviews because I didn't yet have a facility location. I interviewed my candidates for that position at the Starbucks. We sat together at the Starbucks and we talked. And of all the people I interviewed, I was like, she's the one. She has what I need for the front desk. Hi, Emily. How are you? How's baby? And Emily is one of my early patients as well. Wonton soup. So, you know, the thing about all I'm saying tonight is, as women, when you take a leap, don't stress over whether or not people are going to judge you. Don't stress over whether or not other people have done it. If there's somebody who's done it, even if it's not exactly the way you would do it, maybe make them your mentor. I certainly, you know, for me, Dr. Amy is a superstar every time I see her, because in my opinion, she was the first person I saw that was the female face of a fertility company. After her, I've met Angie Beltsos. I've met other doctors who were the female faces of a fertility clinic. But at the time, she, yes, I know, but we can't bring her yet, not with this whole COVID situation. I think that's the biggest thing I miss, is not meeting the babies in person. But yeah, and so talking about Shauna worked with me for 4 months. She was integral in helping me put together just the processes. You know, we started off in a 2-room clinic. Those who know Nevada Fertility Institute today, it's very different. Some of you actually know it from, but because it turned out there were just so many different paperwork and licenses that needed to be completed before we can actually start the build out for this new clinic. Yes, manifesting this baby says it's so hard for me to imagine it being so small. Yeah, yes, it really was. It was quite small. And we started there because the state, it was just taking so long. Even though we had signed everything for the space in March of 2016, we were unable to start any build out because there were just so many things that we had to get in place with the state of Nevada before we could do work. And so I was like, well, you know, we're not making any moves if we're not seeing patients. I know it's Claire. I know, Claire. I didn't want to say your name unless you wanted me to. And so I was like, you know what? We just need to start seeing patients. And the truth is, and this is the truth that I'm sharing now. And for those of you who are listening, who are fellows, who are maybe already in practice, but thinking of starting your own, but especially for the fellows, or if you're thinking of starting your own in someplace new, because keep in mind, I had no ties to Las Vegas, none, except I liked it. And it was close to California. It had all the right things I thought was in a city that I was seeking to start a practice in, but I had no ties to Las Vegas. So the big thing for me with all that was recognizing that I'm going to have to build from small. And so I literally was driving one day. My mom and I were in the car and we were driving. And I said to her, you know, I need to start seeing patients. I know the build out isn't going to start. I know we're having a tough time getting the clinic space built out. But the truth is, if I wait for the space to be built out to start seeing patients, I won't get anywhere because the patients don't know me. I don't have patients. I need to start building a patient base. Hi, Lisa. Lisa and Melissa know the old space, the original tiny clinic space I was in over at San Martin Hospital. And so I was like, you know what? This might be fate, right? I was like, I think this is fate intervening. I think this is grace and serendipity intervening, because the truth is I'm new to this town. I need to first establish a base in the town. I need to start seeing patients so that they can know I'm here, know who I am, know what my service is like, know what my drive and motivation is, and get to see my expertise. And so that's what we did. And so on November 12th, 2016, I started seeing patients in a little 2-room space. Basically, we leased a spot, the back part of an established OBGYN clinic. They had initially intended for that back area to become a med spa where they would do like massages and stuff, which meant they had a separate entrance. And that was all I needed. So we had a separate back door entrance. And we had a little countertop and 2 rooms that we could use. And that's what we did. We started with those 2 rooms, me and Shauna sitting there. You know, I always joke and I tell my staff, because we have an electronic medical record system and scheduling system. And whenever they're, you know, talking about, you know, the busyness of the clinic, et cetera, and I say, you know, guys, there used to be a time where Shauna and I would sit and we'll be in the clinic all day with 1 or 2 patients in the clinic. And indeed, if you go back and look from, you know, my first patient. So I started on October 12th. I saw my first patient, November 12th, 2016. Saw the first patient on November 13th. I think I saw a total of 4 or 5 patients that week. So you're probably asking, well, how did you get patients? Well, like I said, I moved to Las Vegas in September. And starting in September, I made trips to the doctor's offices in town, the OBGYN clinics, introducing myself. I just kept going around from clinic to clinic, telling them who I was, giving my card, telling a little bit about my credentials, what I hoped to do, and listening. So I call it my listening tour. You know, it was an opportunity to meet with every generalist in Las Vegas. And that's how I learned Las Vegas. It was just going from clinic to clinic. Some clinics, they weren't really interested in talking to us. Others, I just spoke with the manager. For some, though, the doctors, I actually got to sit and have a chat with the doctors. And that's how I started. That's how I started, you know, but it took groundwork, legwork. And so that was good, though. Because what it also means is today, I know those doctors. I know the doctors in town. I know them. I've met them. We talk. You know, I heard from their eyes what was best practice, not so best practice. I learned all that from them. Now, guys, this might stop. If it does, we'll come back on. But cheers, virtual happy hour. I actually like doing these. I'm sad. I don't know why we had stopped, but it's not you guys that stopped. Obviously, it was me, but I got so busy. So anyway, 4-year anniversary, cheers, of announcing the formation and the start of Nevada Fertility Institute. We've grown so much. So I've gone from me and Shauna to now having 3 medical assistants on staff, having 3 people working front desks / reception, having a full-time manager, having my embryologist and an andrologist working with her, having 2 full-time RNs and room for up to 6 per diem RNs. And of course, now looking to add more senior level practitioner staff as well, including another physician. We're getting there. So, you know, it's just, we've learned so much. Tatiana says, I want to come to your clinic. Are there payment plan options? There are, Tatiana. There's so many ways to afford fertility services. Some of the ways to afford it actually comes through health insurance, right? So there are a number of health insurance companies that have fertility benefits and coverage. You just have to ask for it. Many of them, it's through your employer. But also here in the United States, there are a number of states, I think at this count, 19 states that have some form of mandate that covers fertility. Here in Las Vegas, for example, there are a number of insurance providers that are part of the ACA, which is the Affordable Care Act, or what some people call Obamacare, that include plans that provide fertility benefits, like for insemination cycles and so forth. Jador Sherry says, do you mentor? Would you love to be under your wing? You know, I do have a lot of mentees. I have mentees who are medical students. I think I have 2 undergraduates. We have mentees who are residents. I do a lot of work with residents and those who are in OBGYN training. I have mentees who are not in medicine at all, but more women in business, women who are interested in business and those who are looking to grow their business through social media. Those who are PhDs and looking to grow. I have those as well as mentees. But yes, Janelle Jackman. Dr. Jackman is actually one of my mentees. So, and how she and I met is so interesting. It turns out we're from the same country. So when you hear that, you're probably thinking, oh, so, you know, it's your countrywoman. But that's not how I met Janelle. I met Janelle because one of my REI co-fellows, Joseph, or Joe as I call him, most of us know him as Joe, he is in Vermont. And Janelle had met him through an interview process. And he messaged me and said, you know, I just interviewed an amazing young lady today. I think she's going places. And I told her all about you because I think she needs to meet you. She needs to know about you. And this is why I tell people, you know, nurture your networks, be kind to people, be friendly, and know people. Because for me, Joe and I did fellowship the same 3 years, not in the same place, but we did fellowship together. We traveled together on interviews, you know, and so a lot of the people actually who I did fellowship with the same year, that is, you know, about 34 of us do fellowship per year. And I'm good friends with all of them. And of course, many of them are right here on social media. So one of my cohort, meaning the people who trained from 2013 to 2016, a number of them are online. So Dr. Plowden, Tori Como Plowden is my 3-year cohort. Dr. Natalie Crawford, 3-year cohort. Dr. Amy Shute, 3-year cohort. Dr. Christy Moss, Dr. Meredith Provost, Dr. Farah Sultan. Oh my God, I know I'm missing people, guys. It's not because I'm forgetting Dr. Dan Kaiser. We're all the same fellowship 3 years. And so if you're also here and you're a fellow, I want you to know that. Ellen Goldstein is from my 3-year cohort. And the list goes on. And I'm really proud too. So yes, that's also why I'm like, whenever I see them sharing things, I'm like hitting like, resharing, because we know each other. It's a small world, you know, it's a small world, the world of infertility. But that's how I met my mentee, Dr. Jackman. And so Dr. Jackman at this year's ASRM conference has 2 posters. Another one of my mentees, Dr. Rasuli Melody, has 3 posters. Oh, talk about a little powerhouse. She's working hard. She's even sent me a paper today that she wrote, a manuscript. So I'm going to have to go through that. And we have Kajal. She's working on stuff right now. Hold on. My light is trying to fall. Oh, yes, guys, see my sequin skirt? I'm wearing a sequin skirt today. Let me tighten this. But yeah, so that's a long-winded way of saying, yes, I accept mentees. I do. I think I personally have been I'm the result of amazing mentors. I've had some incredible mentors. Claire says that's a really cute skirt. Thank you. Thank you so much. I like shiny things. I like sequins. You know, I think part of it is coming from the Caribbean. We have some love of slight flamboyance. So that's one of my things I like. But yes, Kendra is saying, are you considering bringing your services to Tobago? Kendra, that is a yes. I've actually already brought my services to Tobago. So my clinic that I'm affiliated with there is called the Trinidad and Tobago Center for Comprehensive Women's Health, TTCCWH. You can look them up online. It's ttccwh.com. And yeah, the short version to that is yes. Jadora said, that is me in business, wanting to bring light to infertility, especially those of color. Yes. And so the concept of light was really important to me, even with the design of the clinic. So when I spoke to the architect who worked on the design for the clinic, one of the things we talked about was, she said, what's your impression? What do you want when people walk into your clinic? And I said, I want them to feel like they've walked into the light. They should feel like they've walked into an aha moment. And so for anyone who's ever been to the clinic, you get that sense. I hope you get that sense when you walk into the clinic, which is that it's designed with the light bulb moment, the aha moment in mind. And it's not just aha as in a dramatic aha, but it's as in, okay, the answers. I will find answers. So we were the only Nevada fertility for a long time. There's now another Nevada fertility in Las Vegas. So it's really important for me to tell people we're the institute, or ask for Dr. Duke. But, such is life. Let's see if there are any other questions. I don't want to miss them. Oh, Emily's saying she's the best doctor. She truly cares about her patients. I do, but I like to tell people I care about patients. I think every doctor does. And I think if you are in the field and you no longer feel like you care about patients, then maybe that's not really this area for you anymore. You might need to go behind the scenes or something. But I love people, and I love the idea of growing families, growing dreams, and that's been the way it's worked for me. So I'm going through, before we get cut off anymore. So it's so hard for me to imagine. So, okay, we already talked about that. So 4-year anniversary, so much has happened. And, so with growth comes growing pains, so the clinic's grown. It's grown in patients, in last count, we've served over 4,000 patients since starting in November of 2016. Crazy to believe. We've been very busy. And so with being busy means you have to always look at ways to scale up with the practice. And so one of the latest things we worked on, because I'll be the first to admit, we got a hit. We took a hit in July, August, where, COVID happened, the pandemic happened, things had to slow down and shut down. With that, we had to look at the clinic's health, the clinic's survival. And as a result, as any other business, we had to scale back hours for some staff. That way that people would still have a job. My staff is all women, including single moms. Some of my staff members are single mothers. And so for me, not only did I have to think about Nevada Fertility Institute and the practice, I also literally had to start thinking about my staff and how are they going to survive this pandemic while we scale back on things to keep the practice solvent and alive. And so we had to scale back on hours, which meant that, we had some people working 1 week on, 1 week off. We had some people working limited hours. And so that meant that maybe the phones weren't covered, because our patients, it's interesting here in Las Vegas, people like to call and talk to somebody. And so we had to work on all those moving parts. And one of the big things that we instituted, that was one of the things I've been working on fervently, was how do we solve this? How do we solve this need? Because what happened is, once we resumed full-time service of seeing patients, the floodgates opened. Patients were like, oh, you mean fertility clinic? Everybody was like, we want our services and we want it now. And so that meant our phone lines were inundated. We actually instituted, so to really get all the new patients, we even instituted a special system so that new patient calls were routed to a special number with special people answering those phones all the time. But what that also meant was, in trying to mirror the lines, technology, man, in trying to mirror those lines, we ended up with phone calls just going out sort of into the ether for a little bit. And so it took some time to track that down, solve that problem. And then we started tracking call volumes and noticed that we were having between 100 to 200 calls coming into the clinic per hour. Per hour. And sometimes it's the same person calling over and over. We know, right? Millennials are very interesting. We will call a place, but we're not leaving a message. We'll just keep calling. And so, in my search for how are we going to solve all this, we landed on two-way texting, and that's been a lifesaver. We've now had two-way texting in the office for what would be a little over a month. 6 weeks now. And it's been amazing. I mean, I don't even know. Now I ask myself, how are we doing it without two-way texting? I'm going to stand because I think this thing wants me standing. So let me stand and exercise and keep blood moving. But the question was, how do we keep this thing moving and working with call volumes like that? So we went to two-way texting, and two-way texting has been amazing. And indeed, what I realized, it's proven my point. We're actually going to write a paper about it, because that's the scientific mind in my head, is if you've noticed that you were able to see a problem, you implemented a change, and then now that you've implemented the change, you actually see these positive results. That's the scientific process. And so we're going to do a paper on that. One of my mentees / intern is pre-med. And so we'll turn that into one of her papers that she can write, which is a different aspect of medicine, but it's the business of medicine. Because what we saw was a tremendous drop in the call volume. We're still working on that. But really what it proved to me was what I had hypothesized. So my theory had been that many of those calls that we were seeing, especially coming from the same number, because we have that ability. I can see who called, how long they were on the call for, did they actually talk with a person, or did they just call and hang up? Did they call and go through the phone tree and then hang up? And so in studying that, I turned it into a research project, I really did. In studying that, I realized that in my thought, I said, I have a feeling some of these people who keep calling, one is they're calling because somebody needs to answer them, but even some of them, they'd call, you could tell from the duration of the call that they spoke to someone, but still they call back shortly after. And I was like, I think a lot of these people are calling back because they have a new thought, a new question. And the two-way texting system has proven that, because someone will text a question, we'd answer that question, and within 10, 20 minutes later, there's another text from the same person about something else and something else. And with one patient in one day, we can have 5 to 10 unique text interactions, meaning 5 to 10 different things that we're going back and forth about. And so imagine if that person were trying to reach us 5 to 10 different times in one day to talk about their 5 to 10 different unique and important issues to them. And so that was one of the big things that we discovered, figured out, solved. And which I would tell anybody, if you have a practice and you're not doing two-way texting, get on it. So Jador Sherry says, I battled 13 years with infertility, did 3 rounds of IVF. Dealing with it firsthand, I feel that as a patient, we look for that light. Would love to mentor, collaborate with you. Absolutely. DM me, send me a message. I'm going to be honest, actually email me. So send an email to info@drcindyduke.com. I have an assistant now because I can't answer all my emails on my own. So I do have a virtual assistant, and she can answer those. And really, these days what happens basically is I do phone calls with her in the morning. She tells me what messages she got, what's happening. I answer, and that way I can move on in a productive way. Because I'm that person who is constantly looking for ways to make anything I do be productive and thorough, but productive without actually incurring a longer timestamp than necessary. So what does that mean? It doesn't mean hurrying things. I'm not somebody who hurries through anything, but it's important that when we do something, I'm always asking, is this the most efficient? Are we being the most efficient? And while, as a fertility specialist, I can tell you efficiencies, we can't change how sperm and egg interact. We cannot change whether an embryo wants to form or not. We cannot make an embryo implant if it's not going to. But what I can change, I would. So that is for the patient interaction and customer service. If I can fix that, I'm going to work really hard on that. If it's a question of your diagnosis and making sure that no stone is left unturned, I'm going to make sure I do that. If it's as a businesswoman doing the figuring out affordability, partnering with different companies and agencies to bring affordable opportunities to patients so that they can achieve their dream, which is have a baby, right? They're not coming because they like Cindy Duke only. They're coming because they're looking for a baby. And that's something I tell all my patients. I think that's why Emily's here also sharing that, because I was very honest with Emily and them and saying, you know, at the end of the day, the number one goal here is that you have your baby. It doesn't matter anything else. The one primary investment for me in this process is you have your baby. And so whatever needs to be done, that will be done to help you have your baby. And that's important for anyone to hear, I think. Hi, SL. Nice to see you. Anyway, I'm actually impressed. This live seems to be going beyond an hour. I didn't think they allowed us, but maybe they've changed things in the last couple of months, wherein if you're live, you can keep going. So I appreciate you guys joining me tonight. It's been virtual happy hour. If you are someone who are currently attending the virtual Congress of the American Society of Reproductive Medicine, ASRM, between my medical students, residents, and post-residency trainees, there are 5 of them, they have 9 posters presenting at ASRM this year. Do please check them out. The posters actually include things that we just talked about. So the posters are talking about oncofertility, which is the intersection of cancer and fertility preservation. There are posters about that. There are posters looking at LGBTQ access to oncofertility care. I know, that's like, whoa, yes. So not only do we have to talk about creating access for LGBTQIA patients, we also have to talk about, are they being afforded the same counseling and opportunities to seek out care if they're diagnosed with a cancer? And so we have a poster about that. We have a poster looking at African-American patients and access and marketing for oncofertility services to those patients. We have a poster looking at male patients and those who need to access specific services for male fertility, and looking at that based on US demographics and population data, comparing it with CDC and SART data for fertility. We have one that's more marketing, so looking at diversity in marketing of fertility services. So Kajal spearheaded a lot of that work, and so we went across the country and looked at websites. Yes, we did. We looked at websites for fertility clinics that are listed with SART, the Society for Assisted Reproductive Technologies, to see what their marketing is. And without surprise, what we did see was some of the obvious things, which is generally when we market, most clinics, their websites are marketing very much to the cisgender, white, hetero patient. They're not showing as much diversity in their marketing. There's really very little diversity in marketing to single mothers by choice, or any single parent by choice, single mothers, single dads. The definitely not transgender. And so we talk about that in our posters and what we can do. And then lastly is the integration of information about complementary alternative medical therapies for infertility. And the truth is that needs to be discussed, because whether or not we as mainstream Western trained fertility specialists admit it or not, our patients are out there seeking information on supplements, acupuncture, massage, all those services. But what they don't know is how effective are these treatments? How effective are these services? Also, unfortunately, there's a lot of talk on the World Wide Web that encourages patients to withhold that information from their clinic because they're thinking, well, my doctor doesn't have it on their website, meaning they probably don't believe in this stuff. So I'm going to withhold that information. And that is one of the biggest disservices a patient can do to themselves because, as it turns out, some of these supplements have biological activity. They really do. But it may not be the biological activity that the patient wants, meaning some of these supplements work against your hormonal signaling. They work against medicines that we give you. Some of them interact with those medicines and can have some really bad outcomes. But as a field, if we stay silent about the topic and the subject area, then patients are doing all sorts of things in silent. Some of them do seek out specialists. They're seeking out acupuncturists who are fertility specialized. They're seeking out herbalists and naturopaths who understand fertility, but others are not. They're just doing their own research online. They're reading studies that aren't really studies and making conclusions that aren't exactly accurate. Hi, Dr. Amy. I was talking you up earlier. Dr. Amy is the Egg Whisperer. If you haven't followed her, do follow her. If you haven't listened to her podcast, do listen to her podcast. But I was just talking to Dr. Amy about my posters this year, mine. Well, you'll see me as the senior anchor author and all. And some of these, most of these, I originated the study idea, but then the residents ran with it, right? And so, but that's the whole impetus behind the complementary alternative medicine and looking at the first place most of our patients look to find information from us. And, you know, I'll be honest, right? I did all this work with the residents, and then I went to my own website and I was like, how would you be graded if you were, you know, if we studied your website? And I have to be honest, our website got the failing grade when we did this research back earlier in the year. And so that brought me to the realization that I had to get a webmaster to come in and really update my website. So we've created a lot of content and we're updating the website because, you know, practice what you preach and all that. You've got to practice what you preach. But, you know, it's important. It's important that we as a field are inclusive. We don't just say we're inclusive, but we have to show inclusivity. And that starts with our direct patient marketing, which is the website. You know, nowadays, our patients are searching, they're going to our website, they're researching us, and they want to see that your practice is going to be welcoming of them. So they're looking to see, is there diversity on your website page? Is there diversity in your patients, how they look? Is there diversity in your openness to different types of complementary services? And if you don't believe in a complementary service, then it would be good for you to put up there why. What's the scientific evidence, the basis for it? Because I found that whenever I've explained to patients why I'm not recommending a certain complementary service or supplement in their specific case, they listen. They listen. You know, I've had patients, for example, one I can think of is chaste tree extract, which everybody's using now. You know, it has another name, Vitex, but the whole premise behind chaste tree extract is that it's supposed to work on luteinizing hormone, LH, in your body, and also then lead to changes in progesterone levels in your body, which is awesome. The thing is, if you actually understand the physical menstrual cycle, progesterone is only supposed to elevate, meaning LH and progesterone have to elevate at very specific times. They're not supposed to be elevated your entire cycle. And so a lot of people out there are taking Vitex every day, like a multivitamin, every day, you know, the Vitex / chaste tree extract. That's going to work entirely opposite to how your cycle is supposed to work. So, you know, out of desperation to get pregnant, someone starts taking that supplement, but they're taking it every single day. And now they're actually harming themselves more than helping when it comes to their ovulation and their ability to have an implantation if the chaste tree extract is really doing the job it's purported to do. And so that's one of the things I've talked to my patients about. I've talked to my patients who have issues with sleep disorders and how we address that and so forth. So I really think if you are at ASRM this year, look up our posters. Kajal Varma, Melody Rasuli, Janelle Jackman, Angela Liu. Oh my God, I'm forgetting my med student's name. There are 5 though, 5. Or I guess you could just Google my name, Cindy Duke, and the posters will come up. But there are 9 abstracts, 9 posters presented this year. So that's that. You know, we talked about my 4-year anniversary of announcing NFI and why I did it. We've talked about the 2-way texting and just learning to work on scaling up a business and how to scale it up. We've talked about representation in medicine and in the world of fertility and what we, the fertility specialists and doctors, have to do to boost representation in our field, the outward representation to our patients so that they can know we're welcoming of them. You know, in every single one of those studies, one of the things that we looked at was socioeconomics. And one of the big findings from at least 2 of the posters was recognizing and solidifying the fact that our clinics are located in the more affluent neighborhoods or parts of towns and states. If you think of it from a state perspective, they tend to be in the more affluent areas of a state. And so that means that for a lot of patients, access to fertility care isn't as straightforward as you would think. Even if you look by state, every state in the union at this point has a fertility clinic. But the question is, where's the clinic located to the need? And you notice that certain populations are still going to find it really hard to access those services. So anyway, thank you, everybody. You know, again, I'm Dr. Cindy Duke, Johns Hopkins, Yale-trained OBGYN, reproductive endocrinology and infertility specialist, PhD trained microbiology, immunology, PhD with a specialization in virology. I'm the founding physician, medical director, laboratory director of the Nevada Fertility Institute here in Las Vegas, Nevada. But I'm also the lead consultant for the Trinidad and Tobago Center for Comprehensive Women's Health in the Caribbean, as well as a telemedicine specialist. So at this point, I'm seeing all of my patients when it comes to consultations via telemedicine here in Las Vegas, which means I'm able to see patients from anywhere in the world, really. As well as, you know, an active blogger. You can follow my blogs at drcindyduke.com. You can hear my podcast, GRIPSY, or Girl Powered Success and Survival International, at drcindyduke.com. In my blogs, we talk about big things. I launched my guest blog, meaning anyone can be a blogger on Dr. Cindy Duke's site. You can write on a variety of topics, any topic you choose. Check out the guest blog section of my website. And I welcome your submissions. You know, I mean, we have so far had people submit about egg freezing, submit about menopause, submit about, we have an embryologist, Dr. Kocho, who I'm going to be interviewing next week, and not next week, but the week after next week, Wednesday. And we'll be talking all about just what can people do to boost their chances of success when their eggs and sperm are finally in the lab. What can you do at home to boost that ultimately, you know? We'll be talking about that, but you know, you can talk about LGBTQIA subjects as it relates to fertility. You can talk about being Black or Latina, Latinx in the world of fertility and what your experience has been. And I really welcome those. We have a guest blog section for what it's like to encounter fertility services as a single person coming in, whether it's for egg freezing or to become a single parent by choice. And lastly, what it's like to be an over 40 person encountering a fertility clinic after the world and society has told you you're too old to become a parent, especially for us, the people who have ovaries, you know? And so do check it out, check it all out. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. I hope you are sipping on something fun. I promise. All right. Okay, guys. Well, we did it. I just did my first Instagram live where I also streamed across. Yes. So hold on. Let me just put on lights here. I see some of your questions, so I figure I'll answer those as well. I'm pulling overtime here. Isn't this funny? But hold on, okay? Just hold on with me here. Let there be light. Yes. So let's go through some of these questions real quickly before we run off. So hi, Margaret. How's my cousin Buddy doing? I don't know if you're still there. Fayola had asked, really per hour you say? Yes, Fayola. We were getting up to 100 to 200 calls an hour. Crazy, crazy. So something needed to be done. It needed to be done fast. Faye said, LOL, we love shiny things. Yes, I mean, if you're West Indian and you don't have at least one shiny thing in your possession, you're probably planning to get one, right? Pramanti said, good morning. Yes, good morning, you know. And so I hope everybody enjoyed the chat. I certainly had fun. It's the first one I've done in a long time through Instagram. Typically, I have people join in and chat. We're going to work on this platform a little more to get more people engaged. But I'm glad it worked out that you were able to see me do an IG live at the same time. So happy Sunday to everybody. Be sure to check out the website, drcindyduke.com, to learn more about me, my work, my clinic, my philanthropy. There's just so much that I wouldn't be able to pack into one live, but you know, that's what happens when you're a multifaceted human being. So thank you so much. I appreciate the love, the support. Cheers.